I got a team preview for South Carolina in my hand right now, and I got to tell you, they could have the best offensive player in the SEC this year. And wait, they could have the best defensive player in the SEC this year. So when I tell you it's a new day in Columbia, South Carolina, it's not just because Shane Beamer is saying the right things. It's because they are getting the right things. In this case, it's players. Having said that, 9 wins last year, and they got the shaft against LSU, and they were down to the wire on the road at Bama. It could have been an 11-win team. 9 wins was really good, though. That's the most since several years ago, which just means I forgot the stat. I think it was 2017. But it's important to note that in this game, the powers that be still do not allow you to carry over success from one year to the next. I took it upon myself to travel over to South Carolina this spring, and I said, Shane Beamer came out, and I said, walk with me, please. And we went into this big glass room, and I sat him down, and we mic'd him, and I asked him, Bradley, about this very thing, and here's what he had to say. All the attention's great, but I imagine sometimes it's like you got to pull the hot air balloon back down to earth and remind guys, we don't get to pick up where we left off. Right. We start from scratch. We are 0-0, and anything this year's team accomplishes is going to be because of this year's team. Has that been a problem, or do guys kind of get it?
They've been very purposeful, very driven since they came back in January, and that's been exciting to see. But you're exactly right, and that's the point that we've made is, we have a chance to be a really good team, but also understand that there's high expectations for, there's players that are returning, but these high expectations are because of what we did last season. And a lot of the guys that did that are no longer a part of this program. They're getting ready to move on to the NFL.
We could be getting ready to see something very special from Lenora Sellers this year. So my question number one for South Carolina, what is the ceiling for him? Because he really popped last year, but he could be a superstar. There's a lot of talk around Columbia right now about the impact Mike Shula is having on his passing game, pocket awareness. Shula is the offensive coordinator there, by the way. I believe he will level up. There are people in the scouting world that believe he will be the number 1 overall pick in the draft a year from now. I mean, they're that high on him. And he is big and he is physical, but there is a layer to his passing game that I think will be added on this year. And if we're right about that, then you better enjoy him while you can there. That's the first thing. The second thing that directly impacts the first thing is I don't trust him at wide receiver. And I wanted them to do what Penn State did. I wanted them to get ultra aggressive and go grab assets out of the transfer portal, and they just didn't. Now, they could know something about their team that I don't, and that something could be they trust their evaluations, they trust their personnel, they trust their development. I hope that's true. I just, past Nick Harbor, I don't really know where I'm looking and saying, all right, that and that and that, that's the depth that I can hang my hat on. Who's he throwing the ball to? That's the second question. The third question is, how effectively can they withstand defensive attrition? Because while you watched the NFL draft and you said, oh, another Gamecock, I watched it and said, well, who are they backfilling that position with? You know, they played Clemson last year. They beat Clemson on the road. That was great. Why did they beat them? Well, I mean, it's because Cade Klubnik made plays down the stretch. Yeah, but they beat him 17-14. So the answer to the question is, your defense played out of its mind. And do you have that caliber team again this year? They were top 20 in points per game, yards per game, rush yards per game allowed. I expect a step back, which they can afford if in the aggregate Sellers has a step up. They can't fall off a cliff. That's what we can't have. And that's a big question to me with them. Hey, wait just a second. I appreciate you guys watching. Most of you are subscribed. If you're not, please do so. It's free. It helps us keep the show free, and that's how we do college football year-round. All right, back to the video. Their best position group is on defense, though. Their best position group is the edge position. Dylan Stewart, freshman All-American, superstar, not much question about him, but Kyle Kennard's gone. Brian Thomas Jr.'s back. He was their number 3 guy last year. They recruit well at this position. They develop well. I trust them at edge. Breakout player for South Carolina? I think I've got to go with Nick Harbor. Although we just talked about him, we talked about the wide receiver room past him as being maybe a bit of an unknown. Nick Harbor came in. He was the only 5-star I ever remember us covering on the show where when we played B-roll of him, it was track highlights. We've had track stars in college football before, but normally it's like a 3-star guy. And so it makes sense that we're showing track highlights. Harbaugh was a 5-star, and we still showed track highlights. And it was the most freakishly insane stuff you've ever seen. This was before AI swept the world. You would have thought if we showed that B-roll in 2025, it was AI. It was not. He is not running track anymore, is my point. So he is solely focused on college football. A tight end led them in receiving last year. There was no wide receiver over 400 yards on this team. And so it's his third year, same system. He's got to be a star for them. He's got to be 1,000-plus yard caliber guy for them this year. Let's take a look at the schedule. They've got, by our internal metrics, the number 6 strength of schedule nationally. It's not easy. I do love the runway they have, though. They play a good competitive game that, frankly, they should win in week 1 in Virginia Tech. That game's in Atlanta. I think it's on a Sunday. Okay? South Carolina State week 2. They get Vandy at home week 3. They go to Missouri in week 4. They get Kentucky week 5. Flat out telling you South Carolina should be 5-0 after that. Disrespect to whoever, whatever. They should be 5-0. They better be. Because after that, it gets real in a hurry. How about a little 4-game stretch of at LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, at Ole Miss. Then they're going to give you a bye week, but then you come back and you got to play at Texas A&M. So that 5-game stretch there in 6 weeks, that defines the season. Even if you get off to a 5-0 start, that defines the season. Now, the one thing that's weird about South Carolina is they play Coastal and Clemson the last 2 weeks. So their conference schedule is over November 15th. Hayes in the barn. They're just kind of scoreboard watching after that. We ran this through the model as we do with all these team previews. Best case, worst case, most likely. Model's got 10-2 best case. Now, I tried to push for 11-1, but apparently the model thinks that little 5-game stretch there is too tough. So it sees 10-2 as the best case. It's got 5-7 as the worst case. I agree with that. There's a bunch of losable games over there. Worst case obviously means you lose all of your losable games. The most likely record for South Carolina is 8-4. Now, stop, because if you're just an outsider, if you're living in Des Moines, Iowa, for example, or maybe you're living in like Reno, Nevada, you only know South Carolina from the outside, you would see the computer spitting out most likely record of 8-4, and you'd say, man, with that schedule and that history as a program, that's pretty good. I don't know that South Carolina fans are okay with it, which is a good thing. Expectation's a good thing. It's not exactly the Shawshank quote, but it's a good thing. It could be the best of things as long as you don't torch everything and burn it down to the ground when 8-4, 7-5 actually happens. So it's not my prediction on him yet. I'll have my prediction coming up soon. But 8-4, the model says, for Shane Beamer.